Welcome, YouTube. We're going to be doing another reaction into SCP-001 with Daybreaks. We're back with Daybreaks. I know, I'm very obsessed with this one. St. Elmo's Fire. I'm very excited to see what this one has, and, you know, let me do the little quick intro, you know. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on Twitch, because I am doing these recording lives. Besides that, let's get right into it, shall we? I'm very excited. I'm very excited where these stories go. So far, they've been not perfect, but they've been great stories with great writing.
The warmth of the sheets and the cool morning air was the first thing Dr. Bright noticed. The taste of cigarettes and regret came shortly afterwards. The stabbing pain of his hangover followed. He winced at a ray of sunlight shining on the bed beside him and realized he wasn't in his own bed. A woman wearing his shirt and a pair of socks was standing at the window, staring out at the sunrise. Bright considered a lot of things in that moment. He turned away from the woman and grabbed his necklace and phone off the nightstand. The woman, startled by his fumbling in the dim morning light, put a hand on the window, but didn't move away from it. Bright took real stock of his surroundings. A row of stuffed animals occupied a space on the floor to his left, beside the window. The paint on the walls and many pieces of furniture were various shades of pink, and little red hearts covered the blankets.
She's about to turn into a slop.
You know what?
He offered with a chuckle.
You can keep the shirt. I've got to go.
With that, the woman turned to face him, her face covered in boils and melting skin.
Whoa. Talk about going to bed with a 10 and waking up with a 2.
He said,
okay.
as the woman lurched towards him and out of the light. Dr. Sumerian was about to fall asleep when the power
I love slime girls. Okay, Chad, this is the difference. This is not a slime girl you would like.
at Site 88 died. His eyes shot open. The unnoticed air circulation system and the hum of lights outside his room quieted. The buzz of the emergency lighting system came to life shortly afterwards. The vents murmured as air began to flow again, though slower and quieter than normal. It had been 3 years down here, and 3 years of trouble.
Oh.
Power outages were new though,
wow.
and troubling in a brand new way. Without power, they couldn't stay down here. Without power, they were probably all dead. Maybe sooner rather than later, as they lived directly under a nuclear power plant. He reached for the landline next to his bed, but there was no tone. He cursed and stumbled to his feet. The room was large enough for a bed, a side table, and a small carved wooden cabinet. A rushing march of feet sped by his room and faded into the background. The emergency intercom croaked to life and delivered its message.
All staff report to your designated evacuation zones.
What's wrong with his body, though?
Repeat. All staff report to your designated evacuation zones.
What's wrong with his neck?
The automated message continued. Sumerian cast about in the dim light of his clothes and then his shoes. He gave up on finding his tie, but pulled on his boots. He opened the door and went down the hallway. He looked up at the stairwell, glanced at the inoperative elevator, and then made his way upwards. Sumerian made it to the top of the stairwell in record time. He went to the lockers next to the airlock and pulled out his equipment. He pulled on his MTF uniform and triple-checked his flamethrower.
Oh, it's a soldier's POV.
He ran one hand over the MTF's logo printed on the body, an image of Elmo with a halo, against a background of flame. When the end of the world came and went, Sumerian found himself redundant. There's something to be said for redundancy in the apocalypse, but not his kind. An ethics guy with a doctorate in English literature wasn't redundant, it was annoying. It had taken almost a year for him to retrain himself to be useful at the end of the world, but here he was. He'd always rated well at the staff gun range, but was nothing special when compared to the agents or MTF members. A flamethrower, though, was a lot easier to aim, so he and the 3 other useless doctors had something to do at least, and if they died, well, no big loss.
No.
The team commander, however, was a veteran, a Navy SEAL commander recruited in the late 90s and notorious for his skill and valor in the SCP-457 breach of 2009. Agent Thompson walked into the room with a cigar in his mouth. He began to bark orders.
Triple check your equipment. Make sure nothing is exposed. Any of you lot turned into drippy flesh monsters on my watch, and I'll put you down myself.
The MTF commander walked into the middle of the room and sat down on one of the benches.
Listen up. We have a power interruption. There was no communication before it happened. No one knows what we're going to find up there. If we open the door and the flesh pours in, you breathe fire until we get the door closed. It's a waxing crescent and it's nighttime, which means we're at a lower risk of exposure, but do not get complacent. It just takes a single bit of moonlight to turn you into one of them.
Okay.
The MTF commander put his cigar out on the bench.
Our goal is the control room. We establish contact with the staff there
Oh,
and find out.
I wanted to cover this since last time, right? Before we didn't know if this was like they were lying or not, right? I know this is like was gonna be an episode later that I say this because this is from last recording, but I have to say it now before I forget to. So basically, I just want to cover that. At first, I was, you know how they keep seeking or talking about like, oh, join us in the sun. You would do like we're all here together. We're all here as one. So according to that gold lady with the future, the threat talking sight or powers, right? And that SCP old man, both are hinting because she called him the sun corrupted and said that it was gonna corrupt everyone, right? And corrupted, the words corrupt, you know, it means no good really. And two, the old man says you could even get outside, maybe see her, but it would be the old lady, right? Will be under torture or himself and maybe at peace. So I'm guessing that if you get taken, it is not a peaceful win. That's just the monster talking. It is actually what's the word? Suffering, eternal torture, and all that. So that's all I want to put out. Let's go.
What happened to the power? If they're dead or gone, we'd figure out how to turn the power back on ourselves.
Okay.
Lieutenant,
Sumerian perked up.
Yes, sir?
you take point. Take Kaplan and Liara with you. I'll be right behind you with Travis.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming they did.
Scramble gear on, everyone. Watch your footing. No chit-chat, and let's make it a night to remember. Everyone ready?
Once the equipment was triple checked, the other team members nodded in agreement. The commander barked again.
Good. Travis, unseal the airlock. Close it behind you on the way out and cover our 6. Alright, Omega-5. Show me what you've got.
Alright, I feel like they did take over the top because
As Sumerian emerged from the
That's why power went
inside of
down.
Site-88's underground facilities, he was struck most by how quiet the world above was. No birds, no insects, no animals at all. Then he looked up at the giant cooling towers in front of him. He paused for just a moment too long as Kaplan and Liara banged into his back. He moved forward, letting his eyes drop from the cooling towers. They moved to the power plant's offices and control rooms. Then he flipped a switch on the scramble gear for night vision. The scramble gear was useless leftover tech from the SCP-096 project.
I didn't want to guess because we've seen the movie on that, right? It will scramble what you it will scramble lights, and you could see where there could be light.
It was questionable, honestly, how so many of them had ended up at Site-88, as it never once hosted SCP-096. For once, the wheels of bureaucracy were useful, though. If Sumerian had to guess, at some point it must have been a consideration to move the object here. Then either no one followed up on it, or the world ended before they could. Still, an eyepiece with near instant digital reproduction of real-world light was a useful tool now.
Oh, okay, never mind.
What it allowed was the ability to execute surface missions, as long as the goggles get recharged. Without power, though, even that was impossible. Sumerian moved forward into the silence of night, and the team followed him. They made it another 40 feet before he raised a hand to pause. He could hear a faint, gurgling noise to his right, but as the team held in place, it got no louder, and it got no closer. He imagined it was perhaps running water from the cooling pond. Maybe. He motioned for them to advance, but more slowly. As they reached the first door, he directed Kaplan to open it. He nodded and moved forward. He took the right-hand side, and Sumerian took the left. Liara followed after them both to cover the center. In one swift motion, they all quickly entered. Sumerian moved rifle raised into the far right corner of the room and confirmed an all clear with his colleagues. Not one piece of furniture was where Sumerian expected it to be, and a single man lay against the wall, a tiny bullet hole in the right side of his head, and a standard issue Glock
So I'm assuming there is no monsters here because they would have took that body for sure.
sat in his hand. The commander gestured to the corridor leading out of the room. The rest of the facility was much the same. Empty rooms, tossed furniture, the occasional suicide. And then they came to the control room. The chamber itself was actually quite large. Various pieces of mechanical and electronic equipment lined the walls. The centre of the room showed signs of a struggle though. 4 men lay on the floor with bullet holes in their heads, and pistols at their sides as well.
What the fuck happened here?
Sumerian said, looking around. The rest of the team stood in silence for
When they have
several
taken their
seconds before Thompson
I keep
spoke
reading
up.
ahead. I just need to stop.
Looks like the flesh rolled through here. These guys hit the emergency shutdown, then they shot themselves before they could get taken.
And as I was gonna say, wouldn't they pull
Sumerian
their
shook his
bodies
head.
away?
But then, why didn't the flesh drag them out into the sun anyway?
That's not our concern. Liara and Kaplan, get those battery backups going and find out what it'll take to get things running again. Sim and Travis, cover the exits. I'll check the stiffs.
Everyone moved into position. Shortly afterward, the room buzzed as computers came back online. The battery backups also caused the lights to sputter back to life for a moment. Then they began to flicker. Sumerian stopped and started to concentrate on his breathing. The flamethrower in front of him was only slightly comforting, given the situation. He knew it was standard operating procedure to kill yourself if you thought you might get taken. But they almost always grabbed the bodies anyway and let them melt in the sun. No one knew for sure if scrambling their brains helped. It was a small comfort everyone who went or worked topside believed in. Perhaps it was a comforting lie. But it worked. Sumerian reached down and felt for the pistol at his own hip, and a bit of calm washed over him. In the darkness, an eyeball
it's the
crawled out of a
eye.
ventilation shaft and plopped onto the ground. The ocular nerve trailed behind it and continued back into the vent. It wriggled and pushed itself ahead. The creature it belonged to was looking around the facility too, for anyone alive, anyone not already taken by the sun. It was startled slightly when the
Whoa.
MTF team breached the facility. Then it felt a sense of relief. It was right. This really was where Site 88 was located. Deep in the bowels of the facility, a massive wave of flesh began to move of its own accord. The flesh rolled end over end out of the cooling pond. Then it went to meet back up with the parts of itself that were patrolling the facility. It was time to finish this.
Huh.
Sumerian saw it first. A dozen tendrils of flesh crawled on the floor and towards them from the hallway ahead. He let out a blast of fire in the flickering darkness, and the telltale screech of the flesh answered him. Travis and Sumerian closed the door and stood with their backs against it. A dull thud, followed by a smacking sound, came from the other side. Then the flesh began to leak into the room, first under the door, and then from every crack and crevice. Sumerian made a dash for the second exit, but the commander grabbed him by the arm.
There's no point in that, Lieutenant. These fuckers are pack hunters. If there's one already here, then you can bet your ass there are 2 more out there. We stand our ground. All of you prepare to engage.
The men and women of the MTF moved to a defensive posture at the center of the room. Then they turned their flamethrowers outward.
That door is about to come down. As soon as it does, light these fuckers up.
Sumerian felt for the pistol at his side again. He could feel his heart beating out of his chest as the adrenaline flooded his veins. Another groaning whine came from the door as the hinges began to buckle.
Continuous fire until we are clear.
The commander gave a small laugh and delivered a final statement.
May Saint Elmo protect us.
May he protect you all too.
With a crash, the door broke apart. The flesh poured into the room and tentacles reached out for them. The room was quickly filled with fire and flesh. Agent Thompson was the first to go for his pistol as the end came. A long life of training let him unholster it quickly and fire one shot into his temple. He dropped to the ground just as the monster reached him. The doctors all fumbled with their holsters in the precious second left to them. Sumerian actually managed to get his pistol out. The tentacles grabbed his arm, and the shot went off harmlessly into the ground. The rest never had a chance. The flesh swarmed them.
Sumerian was grasped by both arms and both legs before being raised into the air. Then, something vile rolled into the room. It vaguely and somewhat poorly imitated a human in size and shape, but the proportions were all wrong. The head too bulbous, the arms too thin and spindly. It moved on wobbly legs inexorably forward. Then it stopped in front of Sumerian's face.
Fucking finally.
It said, in a single voice.
It's me.
Sumerian's eyes went wide.
Look.
The creature produced a familiar ruby and silver amulet from a fold in its skin.
Holy shit. Bright?
Oh,
Sumerian
wow.
asked.
He did survive.
The
Okay.
one and only. If I like...
Okay, I feel really bad for the other guy that killed himself because it turns out this wasn't the monster. This is just. No wonder you said that I was surprised. Okay. So I was right on my theory in the last video, or the last one before that. That Bright, or the one with the amulet, which I assumed was Bright, would survive this because, well, the amulet conserves your soul, and if your soul is not can't get corrupted because it's an object, unlike the flesh, then either he'd be trapped in the soul, in the stone, unmovable, unmoving, or he would have control of his body, which seemed like he did.
Let you go. Will you promise not to kill yourself?
Sumerian nodded, and the creature let him drop to the floor. He landed on his feet but dropped to one knee immediately from the impact. He gave a mournful glance towards his former commander before looking up at the monstrosity standing over him.
What are you?
The creature gave the approximation of a shrug.
I'm not sure. But I need your help.
Sumerian looked at the other dumbfounded members of the MTF, silently trapped in tendrils of flesh and sinew.
Help with what, Bright?
What do you know about Yellowstone?
The reset button?
Aye. That's the one.
I know only a human hand can activate it, and it's almost 2,000 flesh-infested miles away.
Sounds like a road trip sim.
Bright, what the
Oh
hell
my god!
are
I
you
read ahead.
talking
I should have
about?
said. I should have read ahead.
I'm talking about saving the world. You guys in? Or are you out?
Road trip. Oh my god! The reset button.
And next entry. I hope you enjoyed this
All right,
video.
let's do another part for this.
Be sure to like and
shit.
subscribe if
2 parts. All right, so that's what Dr. Bright was doing on his way there. Makes sense. Okay. Makes sense. I see. That's the plan. The big reset button. That's what they're waiting for.
Good day, everyone, and
This is the-
welcome to When Day Breaks. This time,
is the
the
plague
good
doctor
doctor
and
is here,
Screecher,
SCP-049, but he won't be recommending fresh air and exercise. As with everything relating to the When Day Breaks event, it's best to just stay inside. And while the rest of the world turns into human sludge, you can browse the entire
Oh my god, there.
firing Chief Engineer Murphy O'Neill.
Okay, there was Ned. I was like, is he
Chief
gonna be the
Engineer
sponsor?
Murphy O'Neill of Site 54 cautiously stepped backwards, firing round after round into a crowd of humanoid creations lumbering their way towards
Oh, is
him.
this zombies?
A couple went down, but the rest barely seemed to notice. The door! Open it now! Murphy turned and shouted at his companions before returning back to firing. The SCP-131 twins frantically cooed at each other as they attempted to override the door security. 131A
I love these
barged through his sibling
guys.
and entered the override code that the other was too careless to get right the first time.
Oh my god,
As
these
the
are
door
really
lifted,
good little boys.
Murphy slung his rifle to his side and pushed the trolley carrying the twins through the door. He slammed a fist against the emergency lockdown system, sealing the door for good. He dropped to his knees and breathed hard, before giving the twins a stern look.
What happened back there, guys?
The 131 items began chirping frantically, but Murphy held up a hand.
Never mind. I'm sorry I asked, jeez.
Murphy stood up and began pushing the trolley down the corridor. This trolley was one of his greatest creations, in his opinion. When things all went to pot and all the dangerous things got loose, SCP-131 actively tried to help people. He had rewarded them by building them their own method of locomotion and interaction. An interface tracked their eye movements. They could use this interface to wirelessly interact with site systems. They could even communicate with Murphy through a module built into his mechanical left arm. They were named Oscar and Yasmin.
I like the
they
names
were his
Oscar
only
and
friends.
Yasmin.
Murphy slung his bag off his shoulder and dropped it on the trolley, revealing a number of mechanical parts
I love
and
seeing these
electrical
guys back
circuits.
alive.
The twins came over to investigate. Oscar
Oh,
began
you had a little
chirping,
ramp
and
up.
Murphy heard the
Ah,
words
so
relayed
cute.
from the trolley to his arm module.
Are these the parts?
They are. They ought to fix the busted transmitter.
Yasmin chimed in.
Do you think anyone will hear us this time?
I hope so.
They
Their
get
home
their
was
own
quite an
play
extravagance.
place.
He had
I'm
taken
so
up residence within the site
happy.
director's office. Sofas, a TV, a private bathroom, and even sleeping accommodation. The windows were all blacked out. The twins disembarked the trolley and raced over to a small indoor jungle gym Murphy had built for them. Murphy fired up the kettle as he pulled a pot noodle from his stash. Not the most nutritious meal, but it had been a tough day.
It's something,
He
you
needs
know. You gotta
something easy.
spoil yourself with something.
He set
you know?
himself
If
down
you
at the
could.
computer with his noodles while the twins played a game of tag. The CCTV didn't show anything of real consequence. Empty halls, except for a few hordes of 049 creations in the lower levels.
Okay, so
Site
049 is
54
here.
was isolated in the desert and relied on solar energy. Unfortunately, the generators failed when the sun went weird. The system fused, the security went down, and all the SCPs got loose. The staff took refuge in the lower levels, while the SCPs got turned to mush in the sunlight. Murphy volunteered to go and fix the system, but unknown to them all, SCP-049 had been down there with them the entire time. He quietly converted survivors into his own creations, and before long, Murphy was the only one left.
Oh, fuck.
Murphy turned off the display, drained the last of his noodles, and sat down at the sofa.
You two, come here.
The twins produced a slightly sad tone as they reluctantly left the play area and joined Murphy.
Look, I understand there is a lot of pressure on you both in the heat of it, but we can't afford slip-ups like that. Thankfully for you, Yasmin, Oscar took the initiative and got that door open. Otherwise I'd be a zombie by now, and you would both be... well, I don't know what he would have done with you two.
The twins looked down and produced another sad tone. Murphy felt his wrist vibrate again.
We're sorry.
Alright, now, why don't you
Sorry,
go and find us a
interjected.
movie?
Yasmin gave a very excited squeal.
Oh my
and made a
god,
beeline
no
straight for a
way.
DVD of Moana sat beneath the TV.
Again? We watched that one yesterday. And the day before.
Oscar joined in and also began offering Murphy excited tones. Defeated, Murphy set the film to play and left the twins to watch it while he went instead to get some sleep.
I can see why they like it.
The scorched desert winds
Okay,
hammered
so this is
Murphy's
54,
biosuit
so it's
as he
54.
tightened the last few bolts on the transmitter.
I feel like he said
While
it
the sunlight
already.
was harsh, actual 001 flesh entities were very rare to see out here. A blessing that this site was built in such a remote place. He was on the roof and a glance out across the sandy dunes provided both the assurance of no flesh activity, but also reminded him that once the supplies ran out, he was screwed.
Anything!
He called out to the twins, who were at the bottom of the maintenance ladder monitoring a display on the wall.
Transmitter operational. The only signal being received is the repeat from Site 19. Nothing else.
Murphy sighed and slumped against the transmitter.
Ah, it sucks.
Not even a whisper from anyone else out there. He packed up his tools and began descending the ladder. A sudden bang rocked the facility, and he fell the last few rungs, landing awkwardly with a yelp, twisting his ankle.
Oh no.
The twins rushed over to see how he was, but he ushered them away as he quickly began checking the monitor for CCTV and system diagnostics.
The lower levels have been breached.
Multiple large-scale biomasses detected.
The flesh?
No external breaches detected, or any 001 indications.
Oh, 049.
049's been making something, it seems.
Biomass ascending to level 3.
Shit! Don't let them get to level 2. Activate the Tesla gates while I get the CCTV up for that level.
Biomass ascending to level 2. Tesla gates online. Biomass contained.
The monitor fired up with a CCTV display, and the twins came over to view the horror. Standing at nearly 7 feet tall was this monolithic creature. Several of them, in fact. Humans with hulking frames and contorted faces. Their skin was all
I'd say go
torn
to
and
your room,
stretched and
grab your
frayed,
shit,
unable to
your
hold
food,
in the
and then
muscle
get out of here.
bulging out from the body.
Outside.
Their faces conveyed nothing but rage and animalistic expressions.
Take your chances
One
out
of
there.
the creatures showed severe burns to its face and body. Murphy figured that one had run into the Tesla gate.
Oh, we need to get back home. Oscar, can you monitor the system remotely?
Oscar gave an acknowledging tone, and Murphy began pushing them down the corridors with haste.
Rosies, a pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down.
The lights went out.
Oscar?
Power cut in the lower levels. Fault detected in the main circuit.
A few seconds later, and the corridors were awash in the emergency red lights. Murphy began running through the corridors as fast as his throbbing ankle would allow.
Insufficient power. Tesla gates disabled. Biomass ascending to level 1.
Fuck! Where are they?
Murphy screeched to a halt as a horde of his former colleagues came around the corner ahead of him. He shouldered his rifle and began firing into the group. The trolley immediately did a 180 turn and began heading down another corridor. The sound of thunderous crashes echoed all around them. Those things were getting closer. As the twins went round another corner, a piercing screech came from them both. Murphy went round after them and came face to face with SCP-049.
There you are. Stop resisting. I'm here to cure you.
Murphy instantly ducked under the arm and thrust the butt of his rifle into 049's side, sending him falling to the floor in a cry of pain. Murphy raised the muzzle and fired 2 shots into the back of 049's head, sending pieces of mask, skull, and splashes of blood across the wall behind him. The robed man fell to the floor, coughing up pieces of his own jaw.
Proximity alert.
Murphy had no time to react as a colossal fist came through the wall. Murphy felt something hit his chest. The sound of smashing glass filled his ears, and the sight of the quickly approaching entrance hall floor filled his vision as he plummeted towards it.
You got hit out the fucking thing. Oof.
Murphy opened his eyes and felt a jolt of pain coming from his chest with each breath. He had definitely cracked a couple of ribs in the fall. Across from him, Yasmin was screaming mournful tones as they circled the remains of Oscar, who had been crushed by debris. He regained his footing and approached Yasmin, who was still screaming. They began quickly looking from Murphy to Oscar, as if indicating for Murphy to do something.
I'm so sorry, little one.
Yasmin looked straight at him and began making more aggressive tones. Even with the trolley gone, Murphy could tell Yasmin was in terrible pain.
I can't fix him. I'm sorry.
The wall in front of them suddenly crumbled as the creatures came trampling in, followed by a horde of people he once knew. Yasmin cowered behind Murphy as they both backed up against the entrance gate behind them. The creatures cornered them both in a semicircle, and then just stopped. They just stared at them both. A sudden raspier, echoing breath took precedence as SCP-049 limped into view and approached Murphy. He was a mess. Blood and gore adorned the front of his robes. Absent an eye and most of his face, Murphy's earlier shots had inflicted considerable damage. Yasmin rushed forward and stood between Murphy and SCP-049, defiantly shouting at him. SCP-049 kicked Yasmin across the room, where one of the large creatures rose his foot and crushed Yasmin under it. Murphy screamed and ran at SCP-049 in anger and went to strike him. SCP-049, however, simply moved aside and kicked Murphy in his already hurting ankle and sent him sprawling to the ground. He then stood over him, dripping blood still. There was only one hope left. Murphy reached into his biosuit trouser leg pocket and pulled out an emergency flare.
Your bullets did not stop me. You think that will?
No. But I know something that will.
Murphy said, before aiming the flare and firing it up towards the ceiling. The fire suppression system immediately activated. An alarm began blaring, water poured down from the ceiling.
I don't care.
and
He's.
the entrance
I don't
gate
care if
began
he's
to
gonna get
open.
eternally tortured. He deserves it.
Sunlight poured into the room.
He deserves it.
SCP-049 roared as his creations began melting before his eyes, turning into flesh. Months of work and refinement gone in seconds. He turned back to Murphy, who was already limping away towards another corridor. He made to follow him, but a fleshy appendage grabbed him by the leg. The gate continued to descend, bathing more of the room in sunlight.
Okay, well that answers one question, and that's his touch is death, right? He has a touch of death, but even if okay, so you can still get touched by these things. They don't care. They ignore death.
He backed away and pressed himself against the wall. Murphy turned to see SCP-049 give him a look of anger and fear as he closed the door, leaving the Doctor to the mercy of the flesh.
I can't believe we lost both of them like that. They didn't deserve it. Out of everybody.
And that concludes this When Daybreaks
What
video.
do you
When Daybreaks will return in
mean?
October, when we will venture to Undublin. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Big thanks to all those who helped, and a massive thank you
I
to all
can't
the
be
amazing
happy.
patrons and members who keep the channel going. Please consider joining them. And thank you to Rick Trexon, General's Alert, Wings of a Meme, JT Walker, Horizons, Nicholas, Number of the Yeast, Fallen Angel, Pepperfish, Wedge the First, Lesby Friends, Razman and Tufty.
There go my favorite SCPs. Destroyed by the monstrosity of 049. I don't like them anymore. I don't care if this isn't canon. I don't like them anymore. Alright. That's been my reaction. That's been my reaction. That's my reaction to this episode of SCP. I don't even care. I'm not even saying intro. Goodbye, bye, YouTube. Bye bye. I'll see you guys in the next one.